exempt from another mitzvah. That was where we were holding yesterday. And the Gemara said we need both psukim. Meaning, the Gemara said earlier that we need a pasuk to tell us both when you're engaged physically in a mitzvah, you're exempt from the other mitzvah, and both if you're mentally engaged in a mitzvah, the Gemara said you'd also be exempt from another mitzvah. Then the Gemara said, and that was taught by Kriyas Shema. Then the Gemara said, because it says, "V'lechtecha v'derech." When you're traveling, "V'shiftecha b'veitecha, v'lechtecha v'derech." When you're traveling for your purposes, then you have a mitzvah of Shema. But if you're traveling for the mitzvah, purpose of a mitzvah, you'll be exempt from the Shema. And the Gemara said that we have another pasuk. The Gemara said by the case of Pesach, when the people were tameh and they could not bring the Korban Pesach, and the Torah says that they will bring the Korban Pesach on the next month. Torah gave them an allowance to bring the Korban Pesach the next month, but they did not bring the Korban Pesach that year, but that year they were tameh. Now, even though they knew that if they contaminate themselves, they're not going to be able to bring the Korban Pesach. And the way they contaminated themselves, let's say, according to one of the opinions the Gemara brought, Rabbi Yitzchak, that the seventh day, they knew, let's say the 8th day of the month was the 8th day of the month of Nisan, was the time that they had the funeral from a relative. And there's a mitzvah for a relative to contaminate himself to that relative. But they knew that if they contaminate themselves to that relative on the 8th day of the month, comes the 14th day of the month, they will not be able to bring the Korban Pesach, but they'll still be contaminated. So let's say they have the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. They'll still be contaminated. So the question is, should they be involved in contaminating themselves? Which, there's other people that could be involved in the funeral and the burial of this close relative, but they decided that they have this mitzvah of contaminating themselves for this relative, and that mitzvah will exempt them from the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, which will take place 7 days later, even though Korban Pesach is a much higher level mitzvah than being involved in the burial of their relatives, because someone else could take care of the burial of their relative. So we see from there that you're engaged in one mitzvah, you're exempt from the next mitzvah, even if the next mitzvah is stronger than the first mitzvah. So the Gemara wanted to know, why do we need both psukim? So that's where we ended off yesterday on 25b1 on the right side. The Gemara said, Succah. We need both psukim. So now the Gemara explains, why do we need both psukim? The Gemara says, the iash inan. But if you will tell me hatam, if you will tell me this allowance by Pesach Sheni, that not Pesach Sheni, but the parish of Pesach Sheni, but the case of contamination, mishum delo mata zman chiyuva de Pesach. There, he was allowed to engage, and we will say he's exempt from the second mitzvah. He could contaminate himself today. The mitzvah of burial of Korban Pesach is not going to kick in until next week. So since the mitzvah of the Pesach is not going to kick in until next week, so he's allowed to go ahead and involve himself in this mitzvah today of burial, and he'll be exempt from that next mitzvah. That next mitzvah never will kick in. the mitzvah did not come yet. So when he's performing this mitzvah today of contaminating himself to the relative on let's say on the 8th day, he doesn't have another mitzvah in front of him to say, he's exempt from that other mitzvah, that he's involved in this mitzvah, you're exempt from the other mitzvah. The other mitzvah has potential to come. So there we will say, if you're involved in this mitzvah, you don't have to worry about that other mitzvah that's going to happen in 7 days from now. And therefore, you could go in and contaminate yourself to this mitzvah, and that's fine. However, but here, in the case of the Kriya Shema, the Matazman Kriya Shema, the night that they got married, yes, they're involved in the thinking of the mitzvah that he needs to perform with his wife tonight. But the other mitzvah is here. The other mitzvah of Kriya Shema is here. So maybe I would think that maybe he needs to stop this mitzvah that he's involved with of thinking about how to do what the being with his wife that night, and refocus his energy and get kavanah for the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. Maybe when he had that other mitzvah that's here now, maybe he wouldn't be exempt from the second mitzvah, even though he's involved in the first mitzvah. Maybe we would tell him, put that first mitzvah on the side. Don't focus in on that mitzvah now. Go focus in on the Shema, and then go back to that mitzvah. Therefore, you need to tell me that even when the other mitzvah is here, like by the Shema, and it's the night of the marriage, so both mitzvahs are taking place that night, he's still exempt from the second mitzvah. Sricha. Then the Gemara says, and if the Torah will tell us, so just tell us by the Shema, tell us that when you're engaged in the mitzvah of Shema, of being with your wife, you're thinking about how the issues of that mitzvah, and you're thinking about it in your mind, so you engage in the mitzvah. So tell me that you're still exempt from the Shema, which is here now, that other mitzvah is here now. So certainly I will know by the case of the Korban Pesach, when the Korban Pesach mitzvah is not here now. If you're exempt from the second mitzvah when the second mitzvah is here in front of you, certainly you'll be exempt from the second mitzvah when it's not in front of you, when it only has potential to come. So the Gemara says, maybe only over here, by the case of Shema, maybe I would say the exemption that when you're involved in mitzvah number one, you're exempt from mitzvah, the second mitzvah is only when the second mitzvah doesn't carry with it kareh. But aval hatam the ika kareh, but over there where there's kareh, right? The case of a Korban Pesach, if someone doesn't bring his Korban Pesach, what's the law, Mr. Heba, if someone doesn't bring a Korban Pesach? There are two assays in the Torah that by not being active carries with it the heavy penalty of kareh, which the Rambam says is to be cut off from the next world. Which are those two mitzvot? Not doing Brit Milah. Person is bar mitzvah, and he has opportunity. Now they have their bar mitzvah, and if they don't give them, make sure they have a Brit, a circumcision. That mitzvah, by being inactive, carries with it kareh. If intentionally they did not give themselves get a Brit for themselves, and also the Korban Pesach, the mitzvah of bringing a Korban Pesach offering. So since the stakes are higher, but when it comes to Korban Pesach, because that mitzvah carries with it the penalty of kareh, so I would not have known that being engaged, that you would have a right to engage yourself in one mitzvah, like contaminating to a relative, and that we would not know that you would be allowed to do that, and what will happen as a result of that, you will be exempt from the next mitzvah of Korban Pesach, because you won't be able to bring the Korban Pesach, because if the seventh day will come out, if they would contaminate themselves on the 8th day of the month of Nisan, then on the 14th of Nisan, they're still contaminated, and they won't be able to bring the Korban Pesach. So I will not know that you have a right to go ahead and to contaminate yourself on the 8th day, and when you're going to lose out on mitzvah that carries with it such a serious penalty. So therefore, alahatam deika karet ema lo, I might say you're not able to you wouldn't apply the rule to be engaged in one mitzvah to exempt you from another mitzvah. Therefore, tzricha. Therefore, we need that ruling, that pasuk to teach you that you would be exempt from the second mitzvah, even under such a circumstance. And the logic will be when you're engaged, when you have a mitzvah in front of you, you do that mitzvah, and that mitzvah that will exempt you from the other mitzvah, even though the other mitzvah is maybe a stronger mitzvah. And we're going to see that if a person is involved even in a rabbinic mitzvah, there is room to say, we could say maybe that being involved even in a rabbinic mitzvah could exempt you from a biblical mitzvah. What will be the case? We're going to see in the Gemara that, let's say, people that are involved in making the chatan and the kala happy, bringing a lot of joy to the groom during the week of Sheva Brachot. We're going to see in the Gemara that those people who are engaged in bringing a lot of joy to the groom, they are exempt from mitzvot at that time. They are exempt from other mitzvot. So the obvious question is, this mitzvah, right, of making a groom happy, right, is that a biblical mitzvah that I have to make a groom happy? Maybe I would call it maybe a rabbinic mitzvah that I have to make the groom happy. And yet, the Gemara says that if you're involved in making the groom happy, you are exempt from biblical mitzvah. Because of the rule, you're involved in a mitzvah, you're exempt from another mitzvah. And the obvious question you could ask is, how could be involvement in a rabbinic mitzvah exempt me from a biblical mitzvah? But I think I wanted to say, and I saw, I think Rabbi Chanan Wasserman says the same idea, that what is the source that if you're involved in one mitzvah, you're exempt from another mitzvah? The source is that the pasuk says, "V'shiftecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech." When you're going on your road, and when you're going for personal needs, for your business needs or other needs, that's when the Torah mandates you the mitzvah of Shema. The responsibility of mitzvot is given to you when you're engaged in your needs. But if you're not engaged in your needs, you're engaged in mitzvah needs. So then, if you're engaged in mitzvah, and so if you're engaged in rabbinic mitzvah, you're not engaged in personal needs. So the Torah's obligation of the mitzvot kicks in when you're engaged in personal things. But if you're engaged in mitzvah, so what's the difference whether you're engaged in biblical mitzvah or you're engaged in rabbinic mitzvah? If you're engaged in mitzvah, so then the mitzvah, the other mitzvah won't kick in. Okay, so now let's continue in the Gemara. We're now on 25b2. Okay, Gufa. The Gemara says Gufa. Amar Rav Abba bar Zavda Amar Rav. Rav Abba bar Zavda says the name of Rav, Avel Chayav B'chol Mitzvos Hamurat B'Torah. An Avel. Someone wanting, how are you, Morris? We are now on, we're starting a new piece. Morris, we need your help we want now after Sukkot to recruit, to speak to people, to recruit for the class. I'm giving you homework, Morris. How do you like that? Okay, you could do it. We're on page 25b2. 25b2. Gufa. Amar Rav Abba bar Zavda Amar Rav. Rav Abba bar Zavda said in the name of Rav. We quoted this earlier, and now the Gemara is going to address this in detail. What do we say? Avel, you have it? 25b. It's on the bottom of the page. The last line at the bottom, 25b2, first column. Gufa. Amar Rav Abba Amar Rav. Avel chayav b'chol mitzvos b'Torah. Someone who is in mourning, he is during the 7 days of Shiva. So he's obligated in all mitzvahs of the Torah, except, the mitzvahs in the Torah that Rashi says in the Gemara in Moikot, mitzvahs in the Torah that don't have the concept of Simcha. But let's say mitzvahs that have Simcha, let's say Talmud Torah, right? He's not allowed to learn Torah during the time period of the Shiva. He would be forbidden. So he's obligated all mitzvahs that are stated in the Torah, chut mitfilin, except tefillin. Tefillin, the first day of the Shiva, the first day, if the burial was the same day of the day the person passed away, that day he'll be exempt from tefillin. If the burial was a different day, so there's discussion in halacha whether they'll be exempt that day. If the burial, if the death took place yesterday, the burial is today, would he be obligated to put on tefillin when he comes back from the burial? So some say they will put on the tefillin in private without a bracha, but if the day of the death and the day of the burial came out on the same day, he is patur from tefillin. Why is the mourner the first day of Shiva exempt from tefillin? Shaharei nema behem pe'er. Tefillin is referred to as a pe'er. Pe'er is like a crown. It's something glory, something very special. And something of glory, it's not appropriate that a person should be going ahead and wearing tefillin on a day when he's in mourning. Something it's like putting on a loud clothing, so to speak, loud clothing on a day of mourning. It just doesn't make any sense. The way Rashi says that an Ovel is not someone in mourning is not someone of connected with something. It doesn't connect with wearing something of glory. And if he does wear something of glory, it shows that he's not an Avel. Like you're wearing how do you wear a crown? How do you dress yourself up with a crown on a day of mourning? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit. And really, that's a biblical exemption to the mitzvah of tefillin, meaning there is no mitzvah of tefillin on that first day of mourning. That is according to that explanation of Rashi. There are other explanations of why they're exempt from tefillin. Let's see if there's another. It says over here. In the Gemara in Ksubas, Rashi says tefillin requires a certain. Okay, we'll go with requires a certain type of glory, and if a person is in his mourning, so he's not in that state that he could be wearing tefillin. Okay, so the Gemara says Avel is exempt from tefillin. Now, how do we now? What's the source from this? The Gemara says. We said that Avel is exempt from tefillin. Is it based on a source? Is it just logic? The Gemara says we have a source in Tanakh. Hashem said to Yecheskel, the great prophet Yecheskel, he tells him a prophecy that Yecheskel's wife was going to pass away, And Yechezkel will not be able, but he should not act in the normal way of mourning. Let's say the normal way of mourning is to go barefoot, not to wear leather shoes. And his personal loss, Yechezkel's personal loss, will be a sign for the Jewish community that has been exiled, that will be exiled, that has been exiled to Bavel, to Babylon. And Rashi explains over here that what's going to happen the same way you Yechezkel are not supposed to mourn for your close relative. So I'm making you a sign for the Jewish community that's what's going to happen to the Jewish community. They're going to be exiled. People are going to die, and there's not going to be anybody mourning for them. And the same way you're not going to mourn properly for your close relative, they're not going to have people mourning for them. And one of the things I saw is because everybody's going to be in mourning. When everybody's in mourning, so then when one person's in mourning, so when you have a situation that one person's in mourning, someone else is not in mourning, so therefore you have the person who's in mourning conducts himself in a certain fashion. He doesn't wear his shoes and so on and so forth. Then there are other people that are going to come to comfort him. But in this case, there's not going to be anybody to come to comfort the Jewish people because everybody's going to be in mourning. So therefore, you don't dress without the shoes and so on and so forth. So this is the sign. There's not going to be anyone mourning for the coming to pay their respects. So Hashem says to Yechezkel, you, Yechezkel, specifically you, should be different than everybody else. You have to wear your tefillin, even on the day of mourning. So, so why is the Torah telling Yechezkel that you need to wear your tefillin? If the norm is when a person is during the mourning period, that the first day of mourning, they wear tefillin, so why did Hashem have to tell Yechezkel, I want you to wear tefillin? If everybody, the same way everybody has other mitzvot, on the day, does a person wear a talit? Does a person wear tzitzit? Does a person honor their parents on the day of mourning? All the mitzvahs of the Torah apply for a person, good morning, on the day of mourning, except for the fact that Hashem has to tell Yechezkel, I want you to do this thing. I want you to wear your tefillin. Why is Hashem telling him, if anyways he's obligated in the mitzvah of tefillin, right? Are you going to tell me, regarding the mitzvah mezuzah, I want you to have a mezuzah on your door the first day of mourning? He's obligated in mezuzah. But why does Hashem emphasize, I want you to wear your tefillin? Because Hashem is emphasizing that you have to wear your tefillin on this day of mourning, the first day of mourning, in contrast to the general public, and they have their personal loss. They don't wear the tefillin the first day of mourning. So that's what he's telling it. The fact that the Torah says to Yechezkel, you should wear your tefillin, you are obligated in tefillin of a kuliyama patiri. But the rest of the people who are in mourning, when they lose a close relative, they do not wear tefillin the first day. And that's what the Gemara clarifies. How there's 7 days of mourning. Is it that the average person doesn't wear tefillin 7 days? Or is it only 1 day? So that's what the Gemara says. And Vahani Mile, and also when Hashem says to Yechezkel, I don't want you to wear, it says, I want you to wear tefillin. Morning, Aaron, good to see you. So Vahani Mile B'Yom Rishon. This is only the first day of mourning. Is a person, as the Gemara is over there, only the first day of mourning is a person exempt from wearing tefillin. The ksiv, because when it says in the Navi says, because that first day of mourning is a day of burial and it's a day of death. The ksiv, Hashem says, I'm going to turn, when it talks about that Hashem is, one is betesh, the seal. When Hashem says there's going to be punishment for the Jewish community, I'm going to turn their happy times into times of mourning. It says I'm going to make it it's going to be like the bitter day. The bitter day, it doesn't say bitter days. It says the bitter days. And the end will be like a bitter day. So the fact that the Navi emphasizes it's going to be like the bitter day. So which is that bitter day? The bitter day is the first day of mourning. That first day of mourning is the toughest, it's the strongest, it's the highest level of bitterness out of the 7 days. And by the way, there is discussion in halacha regarding what I recall is how many days on a Torah level is the mourning. Or so I mean here the language here is emphasizing that the first day is the highest level of mourning. So by saying that it'll be the first day, it's specifically the first day that a person would be exempt from tefillin. The first day is where it's the highest level of mourning, of bitterness, and that's the day and pain. That's the day that a person would be exempt from putting on tefillin. But the exemption of putting on tefillin will not be a 7-day exemption. Is that clear? That's what the Gemara says. Okay. Now we're continuing in the Gemara on 25b2. So it'll come out that even though the whole time of Avelut is the time of mourning, the 7 days, and even though we said tefillin is called the pe'er, tefillin is called glory, like a crown, and therefore we said it's not appropriate to wear that crown when a person's in mourning. But yet, since the level of mourning is much stronger the first day, it's only inappropriate for a person to wear the tefillin, and the exemption from wearing tefillin will only be on the first day of mourning. Is that clear, everybody? Okay. Now we're on 25b2. V'amar Rav Abba bazav d'amar Rav. On the right side. Morning, Jaime. I was thinking of sending you a text to say that we miss you. Okay, yeah, you see that? You read minds. Okay. We're on 25b2 on the right side. Amar Rav Abba bazav d'amar Rav. Avel chayav b'sukkah. We say a person who is an avel, he's chayav in a sukkah. So what's the case talking about over here? So some of the commentators explain, because listen, if someone passed away before the holiday and comes the holiday would knock out the Shiva, right? As long as they sat Shiva before the holiday, let's say if the holiday of Sukkot would be tomorrow. So if a person, someone lost a relative today, and they buried the person today, they sat Shiva today, then comes the holiday, then no more Avel. The holiday knocks off the Shiva. But what we're talking about here is that the person lost a close relative on the holiday itself, and therefore they conduct themselves in private. they conduct themselves with things of avelu, even though they didn't yet start sitting shiva yet. But let's say relations with one's wife, which is something, it's a private thing. So they would those type of things, they would conduct themselves like like a mourner. It's not in public. In public, they will not act on the holiday. They don't do things of mourning in public, but just in private, certain laws of that are things in private, they would go ahead and conduct themselves. So here we're talking about, let's say, something, sleeping in a sukkah, or which is part of the mitzvah of sukkah. So here we're saying that this avel, or doing things in a sukkah, which maybe will not be in public, he is still chayav during this time period to go to the sukkah. Avel chayav the sukkah. So this person is obligated to go to the sukkah. So the Gemara says, shita. Isn't it obvious? The rabbi already told us that an avel, someone who's in the mourning period, the 7 days of Shiva, he's obligated all mitzvot, and there's one mitzvah we said that he's exempt. The first day of the Shiva, we said the first day, and according to if it's the first day of mourning and the burial and the death took place the same day, they're exempt from the mitzvah of tefillin that day, that first day of mourning. And if the burial took place one day and the death took a different day, so then we said many put on tefillin when they come back, but they would not say a bracha. But getting back to our point here in the Gemara, shita, why would you think that he's not obligated during the Shiva to sit in a sukkah, to sleep in a sukkah, to eat in the sukkah? Shita. But the Gemara said, Ma'u de tema, I might have thought the following. We have we know that someone who's distressed, let's say the rain comes in, and by being in the sukkah, you're distressed. So we know you're patur from a sukkah. If the rain will come in, there's enough rain to come in that if this will be leaking into your house, you would step out of your house, you would go somewhere else. So therefore, you're exempt from being in the sukkah under such a circumstance, right? Because of the stress that you have, the discomfort that you have. Because the Torah says, 7 days teshuv, you dwell in a sukkah, and we say you're supposed to dwell in a sukkah the way you live the whole year. And in the whole year, the way you live the whole year is that you don't live in the house that the rain is coming in. So too, if the rain is coming into the sukkah, you're distressed, so you're exempt from the sukkah. So you might have said the same way that when you are in stress, your discomfort, your strong discomfort, you're exempt from the sukkah when the rain comes in. So you might have said, similarly, when hainami mitzdahu, the person is also in distress because of that personal loss that he has. So you might say that he should be exempt from going to the sukkah during this time period of the great pain that he has. So the Gemara says that's why the rabbi is saying you can't compare the two. Hani mile sara de memela. That's if the stress comes from being from the sukkah. The sukkah is causing the discomfort. The sukkah, the rain is coming in, or some other issue that's happening from the sukkah, that the sukkah is causing you. Being in the sukkah is the cause for your distress. But over here, aval hacha, it's not that his being in the sukkah is causing his distress. His thinking about and focusing on his loss is causing him to feel uncomfortable in the sukkah. That's what's causing him not to be comfortable in the sukkah. He's much more comfortable in the house than being in the sukkah during this time period, because he's focusing in on his loss. So what he needs to do is he needs to go ahead and put focus on his mind to ease himself and to say, now I have to not focus, the person that's not focused on his pain, and say, you know what, and psych himself up to go out to the sukkah and to do the mitzvah of sukkah. Since it's not the sukkah is not causing his discomfort. It's his own personal feelings that he has that's creating this, making him feel uncomfortable being outside in the sukkah. So then we're going to ask him to work on himself and to put his focus in to be able to go out to do the sukkah. But when the sukkah is causing the pain, when the sukkah is the cause of the pain, it's not an internal thing that the person is creating his own discomfort. It's the sukkah is causing discomfort. Then he's exempt. That's when he'll be exempt from the sukkah. Now comes another fascinating Gemara coming up. Amarav Abba Bazavd Amarav Chatan Vashvinin. A guy got married, Mazel Tov Mabruk, and when did he get married? He got married right before the holiday. You should know my father, Rabbi London, of blessed memory. When did he get married? He got married between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Something that nobody does. I don't know if you ever heard anyone get married, Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Why did he get married? He was already a Rosh Hashiva by the time he got married. He got married later. He was one of the things that Rabbi London will not tell you to learn from him is to get married late in life. He got married, I think he was upper 30s. He was saving the world, and he didn't get married until he also was waiting for his brother. They were both saving the world. So as a Rosh Hashiva, when is there a break in the Zman between Yom Kippur and Sukkot? Is when there's a break in the schedule. So he got married between good to see him, between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. So here, now, I would say in the times of the Gemara, it would be much more common to get married between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Why? Because they used to get married on Friday. It was a very common custom to get married on Friday, because they couldn't afford to make just a special, regular, beautiful meal on a regular night. But anyways, you make a beautiful meal on Friday night and Shabbat. So the common custom for many, many years in the Jewish community was to get married on Friday afternoon. And then we celebrate Friday night with a Shabbat dinner and Sheva Brachot and so on and so forth. So I would think the same thing happened over here in the Sukkot, that they would get married Erev Sukkot. On the day of Sukkot would be tonight. They'll get married this afternoon, and they'll have the beautiful meal tonight. Anyways, you have to prepare a beautiful Yom Tov meal. So that would be one of the ways that they would go ahead and do it. So now during this whole week, so they have pretty much about a week. Let's say on a Torah level, let's say in the land of Israel, the holiday of Sukkot is right 7 days in the Sukkah. So during that 7 days in the Sukkah, the Gemara says over here, okay, well, obviously today's day we'll see what the halacha will be, but they are exempt for 7 days. He's exempt from being in the Sukkah. Not only is he exempt from being in the Sukkah, we'll have to explain why. All his friends, the groomsmen, are also exempt from the Sukkah. You know, we talk about the best men. They come to the wedding. They walk down the chuppah. They're the best men are there. But in the times of the Gemara, the best men were there the whole week. It was a week's job of being the best man to be there for the week, to bring a lot of simcha for the chatan. It's a week of celebration. It's the 7 days of celebration. We know people have Sheva Brachot every night. A lot of people have Sheva Brachot every night. But there's a special mitzvah for people to make the groom happy. And therefore, since they're involved in making the groom happy, they're exempt from the mitzvah of going to the sukkah. And the Gemara is going to ask, why can't they do let's move the location of the sukkah and make him happy in the sukkah. So we'll see tomorrow, and we'll love to have everyone back. And if everybody brings in one person, we'll double the class. And it's a fascinating Gemara. But I think the lesson to me is, look what they did to make the groom happy. A whole week, their friends took off from their time, from their schedule, because it's a big deal. that a person should start his marriage with a bang, with a simcha. When you start with a great simcha, then it carries with you. Just like when a guy gets bar mitzvah. When someone gets bar mitzvah, you're supposed to start off with great simcha. If you have great simcha, then he looks at Torah and mitzvot with a great happiness that carries him. I want to wish everyone